Full sentences spoken through the eyes and quick whispers having to do with other things. It was as if they were performing for someone. But for whom? The truer conversation flowed in rivers of fear and caution beneath the music of what could openly be said. V checked her watch, then stubbed out her cigarette, and just then a buzzer sounded. Louisa caught my eyes as if to say, now, as if to say, be careful. And I could tell that she was afraid. But of what? The same little fountain of V's laughter and greetings splashed into the front hall, and the men Louisa had told me about came hurriedly into the dining room, one of them grabbing V around the waist from behind and pulling her onto his lap. They set their guns on the table and asked the maid to bring them beer. I was introduced to each of them, and I followed Louisa's lead, which was to smile the entire time and look pleased to meet them. V crossed her legs in the man's lap, wrapping her arm around his neck. These men weren't like campesinos, nor were they like the wealthy oligarchs. They were not thin, wore no straw hats, and didn't carry machetes on their belts, nor did they wear expensive suits and soft Italian shoes. Instead, they tucked guns into their waistbands, smiled with gold-rimmed teeth, wore their hair combed and wet, and smelt of aftershave. One of them suddenly asked if I was an American, and what was I doing here? Louisa rushed to answer that I was from Miami. I had come to visit her. Isn't that wonderful? Tomorrow we were going on holiday to the Black Sand Beach. We said our goodbyes, and as instructed, I followed Louisa up the stairs, leaving V behind with the men, the one in whose lap she was still sitting, and the two others. In the upstairs bedroom, Louisa motioned for me to sit down with her in the wide space on the floor between the two single beds. She held her finger to her lips and took the tape recorder out of her bag. Then stretching out, and with the tape recorder held close to her mouth, she pressed her ear to the gray tile floor. The voices grew beer loud, then low, and every few minutes Louisa whispered into the machine. More than once she signaled me to be quiet. The voices were laced with V's laughter, and then the voices died. A door closed behind them. V came to our bedroom door, and Louisa went to her. I saw them hold each other, then break away, and V went back downstairs. Louisa patted the bed I was to sleep on, and she stretched out on the other one, turning toward me on the pillow. D'Abuisson's men, she whispered into the dark air. Roberto D'Abuisson. I had heard this man referred to as Blowtorch Bob because he used a blowtorch during torture sessions. They also called him Chele for his light skin. It is toward the end. We are walking in a field in the Campo. It is a beautiful day. The light, the empty sky, a man drinking from a hollowed gourd, another leaning on a hoe, a woman with an apron skirt over her trousers, blazing light and the rattle of sorghum seeds. I'm holding a spray of sorghum. A man takes Lionel aside and tells him something. It is a secret, like everything else. We get into the Jeep, and without explanation we drive to another place, not far from where we were, but far enough that we couldn't have walked. The air is now tinged with smoke. The campesinos would have walked. What are we looking for? I must have asked, and he, as always, would not have answered this question. He just kept repeating, "God damn it," under his breath. There was a haze of blue smoke now where the corn stalks had been. Lionel stopped the Jeep short of a cluster of champas. One of them had collapsed, and smoke rose from it. "Wait here," he'd said, but I didn't wait. I had stopped waiting in the Jeep many months before this, but he kept telling me to wait nevertheless. The smoke was blue and rolled like a shore cloud along the fields just above the blackened corn leaves. We walked, and when he stopped, I stopped, and when he continued, I continued. He palmed the air as if to say, "Slow down," or "Be quiet." I slowed down and was quiet. We reached the champas, but no one was in them. No one was home. A large plastic bowl used for making the slurry that becomes tortilla dough was overturned on the ground. There was a small T-shirt in the tortilla slurry. Behind one of the champas it appeared that several hens had been held by their feet and whacked against a stone. They were lying on the ground, one of them still opening and closing its beak. On this day I learned that the human head weighs about 2.5 kilos, and a child's head something less. 100 or so meters more, and we hear the hum of flies, the rattle of turkey buzzard song, a flapping of wings like applause in the maize stalks as the fat birds try to lift themselves skyward. A truck with an open bed follows at a distance behind us, and with 3 campesinos standing in the back as they stand while riding to the cane fields. They are calling out to us or to the driver of the truck, but I don't understand what they say. I don't know what I had expected to see, but not the swollen torso of a man with one arm attached, not the black pool of tar over his crotch. I didn't expect that his head would be by itself some distance away, without eyes or lips. The stench in the air was familiar, a rotting, sweet, sickening smell, bad meat, human death. I must have bent over when I saw the head because I wanted to help, but I hear Lionel saying, "Don't, let the others carry that." I thought they were going to find the rest of the man and place his remains in the truck, but that's not what they did. Instead, they carried the arms and hands, the legs with their feet attached, and brought them to the torso where it lay on the ground. Lastly, they set the head on the neck where it once had been. Then the 3 took off their straw hats and stood in a circle around the man they had reassembled. They stood, and one of them crossed himself lightly. It was easy to miss this. The parts were not quite touching. There was soil between them, especially the head and the rest. No lips and no tongue. The soft tissues are eaten first. Birds belching nearby, hoping we would go away and leave this meal to them. The air humming. We walked. "Why doesn't anyone do something?" I think I asked. And this is the end. We climbed the slope of the Wazapo volcano with the box of his ashes, taking turns as we carried it, having left the vehicles behind on the stony road. His were finer and grayer than the ashes of others, and I wondered why this was, thinking that the fire in which they burned must have been hotter. But mercifully, the vision of him in flames died out, and I returned to the work of making my way over the stones behind the men from La Mora, Luis and Candelario. The mayor of the nearest town was to be next in our convoy, but his jeep gave out when its undercarriage struck a boulder loosened in the rainy season. So now the mayor too walked, but only we carried the box, although nothing was ever said about this, that we should be the only ones to carry it. Sunlight broke through the canopy of jacaranda, cedar, and bamboo, filtering down to the saplings that had already grown to my height in the very deepest crater dug here during the war, when the blast was heard in the surrounding hills and seen as black smoke rising to the clouds from where it came, trees yanked out by their roots, boulders sprayed into the air, and earth blasted away, taken up, never to rain back down. Nothing was ever found of that earth again. It remained in the clouds. None of us had expected that he would die in a hospital bed. Even toward the end, when he fell asleep as he talked but no longer slept through the night, we didn't expect this way of death. It was always going to be by machine gun fire or a beating in a detention cell. We thought that one night our telephones would ring and we would be told that he was disappeared. And in the days that followed, we would search through the body dumps and along the black sand beaches of the coast for his corpse. From the peak of the volcano, city and sea are visible, and the whole of the country as it shrinks into its place on the maps, small and poor beneath us, a country that had for a time grown large under the gaze of the world. Before the war, tapir lived in the mountains' folds, monkeys and iguana, coyotes and even jaguar, the wild cat of his prescient dreams. Hundreds of species of birds alighted here, 1,000 of butterflies, and the streams ran clear through Wazapa's ridges to the river. No longer. Thousands of pounds of bombs rained into this forest during the war. White phosphorus and napalm also rained. So that may have been the reason he brought me here just before the war began, and why he was silent all afternoon more than 35 years ago. He said that he wanted to show me a beautiful place, to take a rest from the work we were doing, to climb, to see as far as we could. But I now know that we were here for a different reason, so that he could steady the far hills in his field glasses and read the terrain of a future free fire zone, here to commit the mountain to paper and then to say goodbye. I have the paper on which he drew the mountain. Awachapan prison too remains with me. When I hear the word Awachapan, there is a wind rising out of a smoking village and a procession of campesinos on the roadside. My husband is holding Olivier in his arms, and along the banks of the Rio Sumpul, vultures rise and fall over the dead. And so thick is this flock that the banks seem to be rippling like a river. Awachapan gives me the last time I saw the labor leader, Jose Rodolfo Vieira, alive, and he is waving to me from the back of a truck before it rolls into a white cloud of road toward his future assassin. Margarita and I are walking along the beach, trying to find the corpse of a missing Danish woman, and we don't find her, but someone else does. She had been shot through the forehead after watching her young husband be tortured to death. I can show you their photographs and give the details. There are reports on everything, Awachapan. This morning we're expected to leave him here, in the skirt of the sleeping volcano. Luis and Candelario have a place in mind, and we follow them toward it. They know what they're looking for, a spot high on the slope with a view of the hills, not far from him, but not for him, but for those who will come here in the future to pay their respects. And they will come. Over the years, I have been asked why.